Hello YouTube. I saw a few people on Twitter talking about this video, and I'll wager that by the time I finish making this, you'll have seen a few responses to it here and there. Well, in general, I try to avoid responding to stuff that has already been responded to countless times, unless I feel I can provide my own unique perspective on the topic, or responding to the video allows me to address a new topic. As for the latter, this video certainly will allow me to discuss the topic of morality, which I haven't really addressed much on this channel yet. As for the former, since I haven't seen any responses to this yet, I of course can't say if mine will turn out to be any different than anyone else's. I guess you'll just have to watch and find out.
Do you believe that good and evil exist?
Well, good and evil are just concepts created by humans to try to categorize human actions on a binary scale of morality. Humans generally find it useful to divide up the world into categories. See, the world is a complicated place, and human action is one of the most complicated aspects of it. Without categories within which to fit human action, we'd have a hard time comprehending it. Heck, even with categories, most of us have a hard time comprehending it. But the categories at least give us a means by which we can communicate with each other about these difficult to comprehend actions. Well, heck, look at that. I said all that and I didn't even answer your question. Do I believe good and evil exist? I think that's a poorly phrased question, really. It should be, are good and evil concepts you believe in which case, no, not really. I prefer good and bad or good and wrong. Even then, I prefer those concepts on a sliding scale rather than a binary. So, in short, to answer this question designed to force conversation in a particular direction, no, I guess I don't believe good and evil exist.
The answer to this question separates Judeo-Christian values from secular values.
Well, I certainly don't think that's true. Plenty of secular people believe in good and evil. Those concepts are not exclusive to Judeo-Christian values by any stretch, but I'll allow you to explain your argument.
Let me offer the clearest possible example: murder.
I'd say murder is an extreme example. I'm not sure if it's the best example, but let's see where you're going with this.
Is murder wrong? Is it evil? Nearly everyone would answer yes, but now I will pose a much harder question. How do you know?
Well, see, that's why it's probably not the best example. Someone everyone already agrees is wrong may not be the best example to prove the difference between secular and Judeo-Christian values. But to answer your question, there are three ways that I know it's wrong. The first is my instinct. I automatically have a negative reaction to the idea of murder in a real-life context, especially when the victim is innocent and there's no justifiable reason for the murder. The second way is that my own chosen moral standards are in opposition to murder, since it's by definition doing something to someone else that harms them that they don't consent to. The third is that, as you rightly said, nearly everyone agrees that it's wrong. That's usually a good sign that my own personal morals aren't completely out of whack. That's not to say that nearly everyone can't be wrong about something, but when my own moral reasoning and my gut instinct are in line with what everyone else believes, then I'm comfortable with that assessment.
I'm sure you think murder is wrong, but how do you know? If I asked you how you know that the Earth is round, you would show me photographs from outer space or offer me measurable data. But what photographs could you show? What measurements could you provide that prove that murder or rape or theft is wrong?
Well, I've already given you my logical reasoning, but as I'm sure you're about to point out, moral positions are not factual things like the shape of the Earth, which technically, by the way, isn't exactly round. But anyways, assuming you're going to bring this point up soon, I'll get more into it later.
The fact is, you can't. There are scientific facts, but without God, there are no moral facts.
That's a strange way of putting it. If instead of going with your own opinion on something, you accept the opinion of some higher authority, does that make the opinion of that higher authority a fact? I guess that depends on how you define facts. Google tells me the definition of fact is, quote, a thing that is indisputably the case. I like that definition, so let's go with it. So does God say murder is wrong make murder being wrong a fact? Well, if you believe in God and you think that his word is infallible, then yes, I guess it does make it a fact, since God's word is not disputable. So you're right, the only way you can get moral facts is if the source of the moral opinion is believed by a person to be infallible. And generally, the only way to get sources of infallible moral opinion are in religion or in ideologies that function similar to religion.
In a secular world, there can only be opinions about morality. They may be personal opinions or society's opinions, but only opinions.
I take issue with your phrasing there. Are they really only opinions? Is the idea that killing newborn babies is wrong only an opinion? Or is it an extremely strongly held belief held by most people regardless of religion or culture? See, I'd say the difference between a moral fact and a strongly held moral belief is very small.
Every atheist philosopher I have read or debated on this subject has acknowledged that if there is no God, there is no objective morality.
And here's where your argument starts to really crack. I'll agree that without God there is no objective morality, since the concept of objectivity involves removing personal beliefs and opinions from the equation, and morality is pretty much entirely made up of personal beliefs and opinions. But is there really objective morality with God? Now, before I answer that, I'll let you fully form your argument, and then I'll go into it.
Judeo-Christian values are predicated on the existence of a God of morality. In other words, only if there is a God who says murder is murder wrong. Otherwise, all morality is opinion.
Is that really true? Is God saying, "Thou shalt not kill," the only reason murder is wrong, even among people who believe in God? See, because there's other commandments besides "Thou shalt not kill." How about commandment number 3, "Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images"? So pretty much God declared it to be evil to make images and use them as objects of worship. And what do you find in every single Christian church? A giant sculpture of Jesus on the cross, paintings and statues of all sorts of holy figures, and all used as objects of worship. So why is it that murder is objectively wrong, but making graven images seems to be perfectly okay almost all the time? And this is true of many of the other commandments, like keeping the Sabbath day holy and the laws about not coveting other people's things. And that's not even getting into all the other laws mentioned throughout the Bible. Why is it that some of God's objective moral opinions are treated as moral facts, and others seem to be treated as simply suggestions, or just ignored outright? The reason is that the laws of God people consider objective tend to be the ones they already agree with anyway, or appeal to them in some way. The moral laws they don't like aren't taken nearly as seriously. So can you really say that even with God, morality is objective? From where I'm sitting, it seems like which moral laws are seen as fact still depends greatly on the opinions and beliefs of individuals and societies.
The entire Western world, what we call Western civilization, is based on this understanding.
To be clear here, you seem to be claiming that all of Western civilization is based on the understanding that without God, morality is opinion. First off, opinion is definitely the wrong word to be using here. Belief is the correct word. People generally don't just have opinions of morality, especially on topics like murder. They have beliefs. Religion does not have a monopoly on the concept of belief. Second, even if we change your statement to be morality is belief, that's not the basis of Western civilization. Every culture in the world is based on a system of morality. Yes, the West is more influenced than other places by Judeo-Christian morality, but the Western world is also based on Greek, Roman, and even Persian beliefs. Not to mention the traditional pagan beliefs of all the different Western peoples. Heck, modern Western beliefs are even influenced now by many Eastern beliefs. Many people now believe in things like karma or reincarnation or other traditionally Eastern beliefs. Judeo-Christianity does not have a monopoly on morality any more than it has a monopoly on belief. And it's certainly not the source of all morality in the Western world.
Now, let me make two things clear. First, this doesn't mean that if you don't believe in God, you can't be a good person. there are plenty of kind and moral individuals who don't believe in God and Judeo-Christian values. But the existence of these good people has nothing to do with the question of whether good and evil really exist if there is no God.
And I let the video play for a moment to see if you had some sort of point to make, but you seem to think that's an argument of some kind. Yes, it's obvious that the existence of moral, non-religious people has nothing to do with the question of whether good and evil actually exist. I look forward to when you explain how those two things not being related has any relevance to anything.
Second, there have been plenty of people who believed in God who were not good people. Indeed, more than a few have been evil and have even committed evil in God's name. The existence of God doesn't ensure people will do good. I wish it did.
I wonder who your argument is aimed at. Is there anyone out there who genuinely believes that if God exists, there would be no bad people, or that there would be no bad people who believe in God? This smells like a straw man argument, seeing as it's so obviously true and is not based on any claim any religion makes that I am aware of.
The existence of God only ensures that good and evil objectively exist and are not merely opinions.
No, that's not quite accurate. As we've already discussed, the existence of God would only ensure that for those people who believe in God and think he's infallible, at least some of God's moral opinions would become facts. But as we've seen, unless the person in question is a fanatic in their beliefs, it's not likely that they'll see all of God's moral opinions as facts.
Without God, we therefore end up with what is known as moral relativism, meaning that morality is not absolute, but only relative to the individual or to the society.
I liked that you defined your term here, because moral relativism is not a term that has only one definition. Based on this definition, I have to disagree. You're presenting a binary choice here. Either we can have a belief in God and thus factual morality, or we can have your idea of moral relativism where morality is never absolute, but is only relative to the individual or society. I suggest there are other options. If you go back and listen to my explanation of why I believe murder is wrong, I provided 3 reasons for this belief, and you'll notice my belief was based on my gut instinct, my personal moral reasoning, and the beliefs of society at large. It's a multi-pronged approach to determining what's right and wrong. And while it does not produce an absolute result, it is capable of producing a result that's good enough to be treated as factual. But you're right, without God, the best I can get is treated as factual. I can never get myself to really believe that my moral belief is 100% objectively factual. But actually, wait a tick, that's not even true. Sometimes my gut instinct on something is so strong that I am absolutely certain that a given belief is absolutely true. The only difference between that belief and a religious one is that no matter how sure I am, there's always a chance I could be wrong. But if you're a true believer in God, there's no way God could ever be wrong.
Without God, the words good and evil are just another way of saying I like and I don't like.
You keep doing that. When you talk about religious beliefs, you use good, strong words like fact, objective, absolute, good, evil. When you talk about secular morality, you use words like opinion and now like and don't like. No, secular ideas of good and evil are not just I like and I don't like. They're I think that is absolutely good and I think that is absolutely wrong. See the difference between my phrasing and yours? With my phrasing, the only difference between the religious and non-religious morals is the I think part. Not as big a difference as you're trying to pretend.
If there is no God, the statement murder is evil is the same as the statement I don't like murder.
No, it's the same as the statement I think murder is absolutely wrong. Nice try.
Now, many will argue that you don't need moral absolutes. People won't murder because they don't want to be murdered. But that argument is just wishful thinking. Hitler, Stalin, and Mao didn't want to be murdered, but that hardly stopped them from murdering about 100 million people.
Yep, you knocked down that straw argument rather nicely. No, people won't murder because most people agree that murder is wrong. Hitler, Stalin, and Mao are all infamous as individuals who seem to have not agreed with that belief, especially when it came to certain types of people. And thanks for finally getting to your core argument, by the way, which appears to be we need moral absolutes.
It is not a coincidence that the rejection of Judeo-Christian values in the Western world by Nazism and communism led to the murder of all these innocent people.
It may not be a coincidence, but do you have any actual evidence to make any kind of causal claim about these murders and the rejection of Judeo-Christian values? I mean, the vast majority of non-religious people do not murder anyone, and certainly don't murder millions of people. Could there perhaps be other factors at work here rather than just the rejection of Judeo-Christian values?
It is also not a coincidence that the first societies in the world to abolish slavery, an institution that existed in every known society in human history, were Western societies rooted in Judeo-Christian values.
Let's follow that reasoning through. Judeo-Christian values are responsible for ending slavery. Yet, Judeo-Christian values and slavery coexisted for hundreds of years before slavery was abolished. In fact, one of the things that seems to have changed in Judeo-Christian-based societies around the time slavery was abolished was that secularism was becoming more popular. Now, I'm not going to go making any grandiose claims about secular thinking being directly responsible for the end of slavery, but I don't see how you can make the claim that religious morality has anything whatsoever to do with it.
And so were the first societies to affirm universal human rights, to emancipate women, and to proclaim the value of liberty.
I get what you're saying here. You're saying that since Western societies, which had their moral values heavily influenced by Judeo-Christian morality, were the first to do these things, that makes Judeo-Christian morals better than other competing moral systems. Well, it is arguable whether Western societies were actually the first to do any of those things, but let's put that aside and pretend it's true. All your argument then proves, even if we accept it, is that Judeo-Christian morals are better than competing moral structures at the time that these societies were formed. Your argument says nothing about the merits of Judeo-Christian values over modern secularism, because modern secularism didn't exist when these societies were formed and developed. And again, this is even accepting that your argument is correct.
Today, the rejection of Judeo-Christian values and moral absolutes has led to a world of moral confusion. In the New York Times in March 2015, a professor of philosophy confirmed this. He wrote, "What would you say if you found out that our public schools were teaching children that it is not true that it's wrong to kill people for fun? Would you be surprised? I was." The professor then added, "The overwhelming majority of college freshmen view moral claims as mere opinions."
I went and read this article. I've linked it below. It was written by a professor of philosophy of religion who believes in moral fact and that moral facts are a good thing. The article was full of poorly formed arguments. First off, the author acts as though something not being considered a fact is the same as it being considered not true. Students are being taught to distinguish between facts and opinion, but it does not automatically follow that they are being taught that all opinion is untrue and is just mere opinion. Within the category of opinion listed in the article, but oddly ignored, is belief, and belief is not something that is usually just dismissed, and is certainly not something treated as automatically untrue. So this article is not confirmation that moral confusion is widespread, only that a rejection of absolute moral fact may be widespread.
So then, whatever you believe about God or religion, here is a fact. Without a God who is the source of morality, morality is just a matter of opinion.
There's that phrasing again. You may say just a matter of opinion, but I'd say morality is a matter of everything from opinion to strongly held belief.
So, if you want a good world, the death of Judeo-Christian values should frighten you.
Well, I do want a good world, but that doesn't frighten me. Because, see, modern secular society has already taken the moral principles and beliefs it wants from Judeo-Christian beliefs and has discarded the rest. So in a sense, Judeo-Christian beliefs will never really die because some of them will continue to live in societies throughout the world. But the aspects of Judeo-Christian beliefs that most people don't want to believe in will probably fade away and die eventually, except in small corners of dogmatic religious people. And I don't see that as a bad or scary thing.
I'm Dennis Prager.
Hi Dennis, I'm Positive Improvement. And this is the end of your video. So at this point, I'd like to point out that you never actually even attempted to prove the claim in your title, which is, if there is no God, murder isn't wrong. You've apparently made the same logical mistake as the quote-unquote philosopher in the New York Times article. Just because murder is not objectively evil, it does not follow that it isn't wrong. It simply means that any statement about it being right or wrong takes the form of an opinion or belief. Also, I have yet to really address your core argument, which you didn't really make clearly, but seems to be that moral facts are a good thing and necessary. We've discussed whether moral facts exist outside of religion, and regardless of what you believe on that front, what you haven't really shown is whether or not moral facts are even desirable in the first place. You seem to take it as a given that they are, but I don't think so. See, moral facts simplify the human experience. Rather than having to worry and stretch yourself out over whether something is right or wrong, you can simply consult your religious text and be told what to believe. That's easy. But it's also dangerous for a number of reasons. The first is that if your religious text tells you to believe something is right, that every aspect of yourself and society says is wrong, then that can be really dangerous. A good example is the belief that homosexuality is evil. Having that as a moral fact may cause you to take actions you otherwise would find abhorrent, and may even come to regret if at some point you give up your religious beliefs or that particular belief. And that's just one example. There's all sorts of horrible things religion can cause you to believe are right and good, but in every other sense, your body, your instinct, your non-religious beliefs, and society will believe are evil. The second reason moral facts are dangerous is, as we've already discussed, most religious people don't seem to believe that every moral law set down in the Bible is a moral fact. They tend to pick and choose the moral rules that they already agree with and treat those as moral facts. And since most religious texts are both ambiguous and written in a different time period, culture, and language, this means that anyone with any pre-existing moral beliefs can probably find religious-based so-called objective moral facts to back up those beliefs. This is how you get people to commit atrocities in the name of religion. It's a lot easier to do things you know society believes to be horrible when you believe there is some higher power than society which determines what is right and what is wrong. And that's what Hitler, Stalin, and Mao have in common with religious fanatics. The difference is that they believed that rather than God being the high power, they were. The third reason moral facts are dangerous is because they do not allow for any gray area. At the beginning of the video, I described my reasons for murder being wrong, and I mentioned degrees of wrong. See, murder, despite its extreme nature, is more wrong in some cases than it is in others. Murder for a very good reason may be wrong, but is less wrong than murder for no good reason. It's like the classic moral example of stealing food to feed a hungry family. Absolute moral facts do not allow for this. With absolute moral facts, murder and theft are evil. Unless God explicitly says so, how are religious believers to know whether there are degrees of wrongness involved in any given evil act? See, you get religious people discussing one thing being more or less evil than another, but in most cases I think they're using their own moral reasoning, not God's, and thus what they're saying is not moral fact, but as Dennis would say, just opinion. And why is this dangerous? Well, because we generally determine punishment based on the degree of wrongness. In strict religious societies, you often see extremely harsh and out of proportion penalties for those crimes seen as objectively evil, and the punishments are appropriate for an objectively evil act. Stoning someone to death seems like a much more reasonable punishment if you believe the person has done something unspeakably evil. Now, to be clear, I'm not arguing for absolute moral relativism. I'm not saying we should abandon the ideas of right and wrong and just accept the actions of anyone who thinks that what they're doing is right. No. What I suggest is a moral system based on a combination of moral beliefs and consensus. And I'm not talking about just forming a strong set of moral beliefs and sticking with them till enough other people disagree with you. No, I'm suggesting forming moral beliefs and constantly testing them, and using societal consensus as a barometer to tell you which beliefs you should be testing more vigorously. If you have a belief that nearly everyone shares, you can take that as a sign that you're probably on the right track. And by everyone, I mean all humans in all societies. If a significant number of people have a different moral viewpoint, though, it's your duty as a moral human being to test those beliefs. The way to do this is through conversation and research. Find out why people with different moral beliefs have those beliefs, and then see if their reasons are good enough to make you alter your own beliefs. Ideally, you should be doing this on a regular basis for all your moral beliefs, but that's not realistic for most people. So as a rule of thumb, always make an effort to test your moral beliefs before you make an important decision or take a major action based on those beliefs. I think if everyone adopted my suggested method for determining right from wrong, it would lead to a much more just and peaceful society. And that's what I'm all about, because I'm positive improvement, and I wish you all the best.